I need to ensure that I'm always speaking directly into the microphone, and I've been reminded of this, so I'm already passing on this reminder to others who have microphones, because it's us here in the room. We made it through the rain, through the traffic, to UN Women, looking forward to this important session. But there's also many people online, and while we might understand each other without microphone, it's not possible for those that are part of the session online. So we need to pay attention. Say it again, because I'm not really that technically versed. Speak directly into the microphone. So we are here in a collaboration between UN Women. Thank you for the premises that we can use and the expertise we can tap into. UN Women, then the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, a very important organization about which we will learn more in the course of this morning about the great work that you're doing, and Women Political Leaders, which is the Global Network of Women in Political Office. I'm Silvana Koch-Merin. I used to be a politician, and now I'm the president and founder of Women Political Leaders, and I have the honor and pleasure of moderating, chairing this session. So what are we going to do? We will have a discussion between experts and expert politicians on the topic of the Parliamentary Civil Society Alliance propelling women, peace and security, and youth, peace and security to new heights. If we look into the world right now, we see that conflicts are ravaging in many places of the world. The most affected in those conflicts are women, is youth, and the ones that are the most excluded from preventing conflict, from finding peace, from building lasting peace are exactly those groups. And there's a united ambition of everybody here in the room and online, I'm convinced, to change that. And these are the new heights that we want to achieve. And by this, we need collective action, we need collaboration, we need to work together, because single voices alone, they can be very strong and powerful, but what's unstoppable is collective action. When we all get together behind the same goal and work on it from very different directions. So we want to raise awareness among those that have a voice, but also bring more people on board for this kind of collective action. And we want to explore ways on how to implement the ideas, the goodwill, but maybe also the political decisions that are eventually taken. How do we turn that into reality? And we've got a phenomenal list of speakers here, and we have a phenomenal group of people in the room and online. And without further ado, I pass on for opening remarks to Sarah Hendricks, who is the Acting Assistant Secretary General of UN Women. Sarah, please.
Thank you so much. I will speak right into the mic as you've guided. It's fantastic to be here today and to see such a full room of dedicated champions in this important space. And welcome also to the many, many who are online as well. I'm bringing a note of welcome from UN Women, but here we are gathered both as friends, as colleagues. Many of you are honorable members of Parliament. You are distinguished guests and excellencies. It really is my honor to welcome you to UN Women and to today's very important discussion. Here in New York, it is a rainy day. And so many of you have fought through traffic and along a busy subway system to get here. And we are appreciative because this is such a critical and catalytic conversation. It is a conversation on the role of parliaments in implementing the women, peace, and security agenda. And certainly, as Silvana has mentioned, we all know very concretely that the world is facing so many unprecedented and intersecting crises and challenges. And within that, we all know that we must harness the very full potential of women and girls. And it is that building alliances across generations, building alliances with women's groups, with networks, and also, especially and importantly, with parliamentarians, that is critical to attaining the change that we collectively seek for and with women and girls. Parliamentarians, those of you who are in the room or online, you have such an important role to play. You have a role to play in leading on breaking the silence on violence against women in politics, on sensitizing your constituents, and also on sensitizing your fellow legislators, and on advocating for solutions and appropriate legislative responses that will make real and living as well as sustainable impact. Other actions that you can take as parliamentarians are to facilitate peaceful elections, and within that, to mitigate violence against women. That may include actions such as mapping or measuring violence, integrating aspects of violence against women in elections and into elections observation and violence monitoring, ensuring that this is a topic in electoral arrangements, as well as working with political parties on prevention, including the ways in which technology facilitated violence has become such an important aspect on affecting women in politics, and raising awareness on changing harmful social norms. I hope everyone is keeping count on how many national action plans have been adopted around the world, but it is a significant number. It is now 107 national action plans on 1325 that have been adopted. And we are starting to see across those 107 contexts increasing discussion on the role of parliamentarians in accelerating the women, peace, and security agenda. And this is excellent. I attended the Women, Peace, Security Focal Points Network meeting in June of this year. It was hosted in Washington, D.C. by the co-hosts US and Romania this year. And the focal points discussed considering legislation where appropriate to advance the agenda. I directly had many conversations with parliamentarians in the room. And in fact, we heard also about some interesting and impressive precedent-setting legislation. The US has taken the step to adopt a Women, Peace, Security Act. This is the first of its kind to actually enshrine 1325 National Action Plan into law itself. The role of parliamentary committees in budgeting and also in budgetary oversight is another crucial area to ensure adequate allocation of funds to women, peace, security, to the implementation of national action plans. So as we jump into today's, what I hope and know will be dynamic discussion, we're eager to hear from you, but also engage in a discussion and to call on you as legislators who know how to make policy that can be forced, policy that can lead to change, whether this is through your oversight of relevant government departments that actually work on international peace and security, whether it's through your role on laws related to women, peace, and security, or whether it's through your role to introduce women, peace, and security into other relevant legislation. These are all tremendous steps, and we're eager to bring those to the forefront today. I think without these actions, otherwise, the radical change in the direction we want to see will indeed not materialize. So thank you all for your commitment. We are wishing you, and I directly am wishing you, the very best in our discussions today, and particularly as you return to your legislatures to carry forward this essential work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for really the untirable work of UN Women and yourself in that area, because I mean you have so many years of experience in that specific field, but you're going strong, with full of energy, and thank you very much for your words and for what you do. Moving on to the next opening remarks of the founder and CEO of GNWP, and Maria Cabrera-Valleca, sorry. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Silvana. Good morning, everyone.
Move the microphone straight to you.
Okay. Good morning. Okay. Hello, friends online. I hope you hear me now. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, I'm just checking if we need more coffee. My name is Mavic Cabrera Valleza. I know it's not easy to pronounce, but Mavic is short for Maria Victoria. Some people find that easier to remember. My assignment for today is to walk you through the objectives of this panel discussion. But before doing that, I would like to share, our experience or that served as impetus for this panel, but also our ongoing work with women political leaders. So in 2018, we were in the Democratic Republic of Congo to hold a series of localization of the National Action Plan workshop. And in the localization workshop, where we bring the women, peace, and security agenda, particularly the National Action Plan, if there is a National Action Plan in that country, and there is in DRC, is to break it down, translate it in ways that speak to the realities in local communities. And in such convening, we have all leaders, all sectors represented, including women political leaders. So they were approaching an elections that year, and actually the first, I believe, at the local governance level. So it was very important, the first after the series of peace processes. So there were about 10 women who are already occupying positions, and some who are entering politics for the first time. So it was a good mix. And they shared with us their motivation for entering politics. And it was so inspiring. They represented different parties. But equally, if not more importantly, they shared their challenges, where they were hoping organizations like the Global Network of Women Peace Builders and all the other participants would be able to support them. What are those challenges? And these are some of what they have shared. First of all, the lack of party support and exclusion from decision-making party structures, even if they already belong in that political party. They are at the lowest level of the hierarchy in the political parties. Second is lack of campaign funds. That was, very evident. Women always do not have access and control of financial resources. The other challenge that they were facing was lack of media coverage. And if there is media coverage, it's gender-based, it's stereotyping. Traditional, negative roles of women, and questioning why are they even thinking of entering politics. And one of the things that we were able to respond to right away is to convene media organizations in the DRC, and have a group interview or one-on-one interview with the women political candidates. So this initiative continued in Kenya, where last year we also did the same, as Kenya was then approaching elections, and it was a mix of candidates for the national and local level parliament, and we're happy to say that at least one out of the 7 women we gathered won her seat in the national parliament. So I hope we contributed somehow to her securing that seat by getting her, arranging meetings with the media. So now we are here, and Sarah has already mentioned the how, it's already mentioned how collaboration with parliamentarians is central to the work on women, peace and security, including through the Women Peace and Security Focal Points Network. And those conversations are continuing, and this panel is building onto that. So the specific objectives for this morning are: one, to foster collaboration between parliamentarians, gender equality advocates, and civil society in advancing the women, peace and security agenda in synergy with the youth, peace and security resolutions. I should mention that among the women political leaders that we meet, there are always youth representatives, young women who want to enter into politics, because as we all know, there's a strong evidence that as more women are elected or appointed to office, there is a corresponding increase in policy making and policy implementation that reflects the priority of women and families. And then second objective is to raise awareness and increasing commitment among parliamentarians on their critical role in advancing the women, peace and security and youth, peace and security resolutions. And last, third, is to explore ways to enhance the implementation of comprehensive and holistic policies, including national action plans. They need to be translated from paper into transformative action, as well as monitoring and accountability mechanisms related to their implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mavic. And now, without any further delay, we move into the panel discussion. We have 3 members of parliament from different parts of the world joining us, and 1 civil society representative. And after that initial panel discussion, we will bring in a few experts from the audience here, and also have time for question and answers. So let me start with Mary Lou McFadden, who is a senator from Canada, an independent senator, and a very, very vocal advocate for both collaboration and specifically on peace and security measures. Please, Mary Lou.
Thank you so much, Silvana, and to everyone on the panel, the Sarahs from UN Women. And Baby and I had this conversation, we think over 2 years ago, that this would be a good idea. So it's wonderful to see it actually happen, and thank you for hosting it, UN Women. I, as has been mentioned, I'm with the Parliament of Canada. I'm an independent senator, and I want to acknowledge this morning that the Parliament of Canada is situated on the unceded, unsurrendered lands of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin peoples. And also that I come from Manitoba, which is Treaty 1 territory, and it is also the homeland of the Métis Nation in Canada. I want to also acknowledge that I work in a place that has gender parity, the Senate of Canada. We are only the 2nd Senate in the world to achieve gender parity, and we achieved it very recently. And I will add to that as a point for us to think about the reality for parliamentarians. And that is, just because we achieve gender parity doesn't mean that that instantly changes the patriarchal institutions that we have to navigate in actually bringing in laws and policies that will make the kind of changes that we're here to talk about today. I will note that at various points along the way in my 6+ years as a senator, I have been surprised at the number of times that my women colleagues have seemed rather fond of our patriarchal ways, and it's not a simple gender matter. It has a great deal to do with the alliances and the relationships built on common values. And that really is, I think, at the heart of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. We have very important value statements. We also have, 23 years ago, the very first Security Council resolution that was drafted primarily by women and with huge influence from women in the South. And I think you can see that, not only in the resolution itself, but in the whole cluster of subsequent resolutions that have been needed in order to really make the details of what does it take to implement women, peace, and security. I was very honored to be invited by Patty Torsney of IPU, whom we'll hear from shortly, to participate in the SDG Activism Weekend, and spoke on one of the panels, and I'll make a couple of the points today that I made there. One is, yes, absolutely, 100+ national action plans, let's celebrate that. But let's also really dig down on the practical realities of implementation. And this is something that parliamentarians have to grapple with all the time, because so many people who aren't deeply familiar with the parliamentary process will think, oh, you passed a new law. Great. It's only the beginning. We always have to be trying to see the matchup of resources, the matchup of the kind of staff with the kind of commitment that you need to actually move from words on the document to action on the ground. And when I say on the ground, I mean on the front lines. And for the most part, when parliamentarians go home to their communities, that's our front line. That's when we're able to engage, and that's, I would say, the parliamentarians that I know around the world that are committed to the Women, Peace and Security agenda, committed to the Youth, Peace and Security agenda, and committed to the cluster of Security Council resolutions affecting for children affected by conflict. They really are, they really do fit together in terms of what happens in real lives on front lines, particularly where people are living in any kind of a conflict zone. And what we have to then realize is that we need local action plans that are a big part of the national action plan. And that needs to be seen by us as parliamentarians as part of our job. We go home and we find ways to bring about actual relationship building, allocation of resources that are needed, and the kind of collaborations that need to happen. One of my specific recommendations, and this comes from a learning of my own, is that parliamentarians need, when we go home, we need to engage our diaspora communities. There's tremendous knowledge there, and information flows much more quickly from the diaspora back to the country in question, and vice versa. And for the most part, again, an observation only, is I think many of our folks that are staffing our foreign affairs, our international relations, don't see it that way. Don't see diaspora communities as trustworthy or as really strong resources. And I hope that more parliamentarians and civil society can work together to change that. Bottom line for parliamentarians, our job is to make law. And it usually takes a really long time. And it usually gets watered down. And it always has unintended consequences, always. So what women parliamentarians and parliamentarians that are committed to WPS and YPS really have to keep in mind is not only the passing of laws, but the whole range of policies and possibilities, including meetings like this, where we can be building the kind of collaboration that it takes. This is a very strong point that Silvana's made, and it's absolutely true. For those of you that aren't familiar with the research on this, in the area of violence against women, for example, we've got extensive longitudinal research published in very credible journals that demonstrate the single most effective investment in countering violence against women is investing on the ground in local civil society, women-led organizations. Last quick point I want to make is about young people and the YPS. And that is, for those of you who are at the SDG weekend or have been following a bit of the X commentary afterwards, it was bizarre to sit in committee room 1 and see this articulate young woman speaking from the podium, and in front of her, it wasn't this, it was young person. What is that? I mean, that's the kind of, I think, unconscious, I'm not saying there was any malice in that whatsoever, but that kind of erasure of young people and the individuality and the dynamism we need, we really have to work harder on that one in terms of engaging young people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for these really, really strong points, and also taking us into the reality of what does the work of a parliamentarian really mean. Because those who have not held a mandate themselves or have worked very closely with parliamentarians might not actually know the many, many, many different engagements that parliamentarians have in their local communities, because in the end all politics is local. That's where you get elected, that's where you get re-elected, and everything that you do nationally or internationally needs to relate to your communities in your constituencies. And thank you also for taking us on that journey. So I'm turning to the first virtual speaker, and I hope she is there. Is she there? So it's the Honourable Member of Parliament from of the National Assembly of Kenya, Umuka Harun. Are you online? Because I don't. Ah, there you go. Wonderful.
Yeah.
You have the floor, please.
Thank you so much. It's interesting just following the conversation all the way from Kenya. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join, but I am with you in spirit and virtually. I hope I'm clear. I hope my internet is not acting up so that I'm not interrupted. Just listening to the room and the amount of work that we are all doing in our different spaces on matters, women peace security and, youth peace security. Like you said, most of the young parliamentarians who are women also happen to be youth. I represent the youth in the National Assembly of Kenya. Slightly in office for a year now, and one of the first agendas I picked up when I came into office was to at least create the path for having the youth action plan for YPS, because in Kenya we've done a bit of work in women peace security, but I'll say a bit of work because it hasn't gone as far. Unfortunately, with our policies, most of it is affected by the elections that happen after every 5 years. So the previous government had a minister for gender who was a woman, and she picked up the WPS as a passion project. And I would say passion project because she was really pushing for it through and through, but unfortunately the government had finished their term, and little effort actually had been done in that period of time with the members of parliament. Most of the agenda was being pushed, especially by the executive. So it looked like a ministry project more than a project that engages across board. So picking the lessons from that, then the first thing I did was push the agenda on YPS and borrowing it from what has been done in WPS, and we immediately I brought this. I sat down with the ministry, particularly the youth minister, and also the civil societies, because that was also something I noticed we had not picked in the women peace security agenda. So in Kenya, we actually have a Kenyan coalition for youth peace security, and we are comprised of at least 300 civil society organizations. So the idea is to at least include the voices of young people in the process. So we will actually be working hand in hand with women with security issues, and we are now domiciled in the Ministry of Youth, and myself as a member, we have at least 60 young members of parliament in Kenya, young being relative in this particular meeting, at least 45 and below. So if you're 45 and below, then you're young. That's not what our constitution says. We just expanded the space so that we can at least have as many members to push the narrative of women issues and youth issues when it comes to peace security. So that's where we are now, and I am part of the steering committee for youth peace security. And honestly, I would say it's been an eye-opener and an experience for me. In fact, as much as I've been working on matters, peace issues, and the grassroots leader even before I transitioned into politics, but now that I'm in the space as a politician, then the dynamics are a bit different because you get to at least engage with the grassroots, engage with the executive, engage with the members of parliament, so at least at the end of the day we come up with a document that, is very holistic and touches on all these areas. And for me, both women in peace and youth in peace is, a very crucial matter because in 2015, I come from Garissa County, which is part of the Northern County. We only had one university, and we had the terror attack that happened at Garissa University, and we lost about 247 lives, and every day we keep losing lives to IEDs, and our military and our police officers are always dying in the line of duty. So part of the agenda, and that's where localizing WPS and YPS comes in, part of the agenda is to also offer protection for the women and the youth who are working in this space. And I say this because myself, now I'm a member of parliament, at least I have some sort of immunity, but when you're a civil society or a grassroots advocate, and you cannot even see one of these terms out in public because you never know who's in the room and who might target you. So whenever we're working in the spaces of peace security, radicalizing young people, supporting women, discussing the issue of radicalization, the way it is, then we have to use euphemism words that do not at least rub off a certain sector of people because we know they exist within us in our communities, and we then have to also incorporate this in the action plan that we are doing. How exactly can we protect the young women, the young people who are working in these spaces? So for me as a parliamentarian, it goes beyond a policy document, it goes beyond having a beautiful agenda of saying, we're working in this security. For me, it's something that I'm really, really passionate about and keen on to because I've lost family to this kind of conflict and I've lost friends in the process as well. So I'm hoping this will be that particular guiding tool that Kenya will be able to use to support young people and women in the peace security space. In Kenya, at least we have support from the Finnish embassy, and we also have the Rotary on board. But we also looking to have as many partners because security is a very crucial area. If you look at what's happening in the northern corridor, especially in Lamu, as of last week, we lost officers, we lost workmen who are just doing their job. So this is something we deal with every day, and hopefully we are able to at least come together to work as a country and as women. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Omoka, for sharing. Is the microphone on? For sharing with us the example of Kenya and the really, really crucial work that you're doing. Also, thank you for being so open with us and sharing your personal experiences and the moments of really of fear when you're civil society representative, but also becoming a politician, because it's not just that you are one. It's a tough way to get there, and especially full of risks for women often when it comes to violence against women who go on a public leadership path and with an agenda that is not necessary to everybody's liking. So thank you very much for sharing with us your insights and being available for this meeting. So now we move on to yet another virtual speaker and another member of parliament who is very experienced in the issues of women, peace and security, and it's Honorable Betty Owaru from South Sudan, who I believe, yeah, I can see her online. I'm very honored to have you contributing to this discussion, and the specific question maybe that we haven't addressed yet is how actually can parliamentarians, civil society and those international organizations, multilateral institutions like different UN agencies or others work together to create this collective action. So is there examples in your own country from your experience where you could give us some insights? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning to New York. Good afternoon. I got caught up, so I couldn't reach New York in time, but I'm pleased that I can still join you through the Zoom. I would say protocol observed for everybody who is in the room. As Senator Melu said, 2 years ago, we were talking about how can parliamentarians work together with the civil society and move the agenda of women, peace and security forward. This particular event today is very important to me because I have at heart the women, peace and security, and I've been advocating for it for a very, very long time. Even before the peace agreement of South Sudan and Sudan was signed in 2005, I was already campaigning for the protection of women, prevention of conflict, participation of women, all this for peace. So when it was signed in 2000, and I was telling the women of South Sudan that the UN actually listened to us. So today, it is time really we should now look back, how much have we done and how much do we still need to do. Indeed, parliamentarians are very important and must have effective role in not only raising awareness on women, peace and security, but also in enforcing the implementation of the same. Because as Senator Melu said, the parliamentarians have to make law, but if you make a law that is not implemented, then your law is as good as nothing. The women parliamentarians of South Sudan have had several cooperations with the civil societies advocating for women, peace and security. There have been engagements through the South Sudanese Women Parliamentary Caucus, which I created in 2006, and I'm very happy that it is really moving the women agenda at the moment very well, and collaborating with different entities, with the UN Women, particularly in South Sudan, and UNDP, and the civil societies to disseminate the UN Security Council resolution, because people hear about it, but they don't know about it. So it is not only to disseminate it in the town where many young people are. The Women Parliamentary Caucus with the UN Women decided that with the civil society, this should be taken also to the women at the grassroots, so that they know their rights, they know how to fight for their rights, and they also should help to disseminate the women, peace and security. In South Sudan, of course, we have many instruments that we can use to disseminate women peace and security. One, the revitalized peace agreement actually gives women 35% of rights to participate in decision making with men. Although we are still fighting to see that the 35% is across board, it has been achieved in the parliament. It has been achieved partially in the executive, but in the other sectors has not been achieved, so the women are still fighting for it to be achieved. And there are other instruments that women are using, the UN Security Council 1325, the African Union, gender equality, the East Africa. There are so many instruments, but even when the government of South Sudan signs to these instruments, the goodwill to see it happening and to fund it happening is not happening. So still women are fighting to see that the government should have a goodwill, not just to sign instruments, but to sign and get committed to these instruments. So the political will to move these documents is still in the parliament. The women are struggling to see to it that the government really can move it. Many women are female MPs use the chance actually for this collaboration between the UN women, the civil society, when they go to the ground to disseminate the women peace and security agenda, the peace agreement, the roadmap to peace agreement. When they go to disseminate this, they use it also as a means to connect with their constituencies and engage the communities and the local stakeholders to build their understanding of the most important thing for us is the National Action Plan, which women participated in building with the Ministry of Gender. However, this National Action Plan is still not being implemented because there is no funding that is attached to it. I must also say that we have been urging the Minister of Gender to present it to the Parliament. Although she launched it broadly, it has not been presented to the Parliament, so the Parliament have not passed the budget attached to the National Action Plan. So it becomes very difficult for this to be implemented. Although the various development agencies, the various ministries which are in the National Action Plans, they take the little bit of their pieces, they budgeted for it, and they try to implement it. On many occasions, the implementation is very low, and there is nobody that really monitors the different ministries, either whether they have implemented the National Action Plan or not. But the dissemination also helps parliamentarians to encourage the local community to identify specific or local challenges that affect them, so that the national government, actually from the state legislative assembly to the national legislative assembly, should take it up. Women in the parliament have taken up several of these challenges which are raised to them. One of the major challenges where the women of South Sudan are facing in terms of women and security is the cattle rustling, which is a continuous. It started as a traditional thing, but it's now become a major conflict issue. And it affects women and children because when young boys go to cattle rustling, the women who are left behind are affected. They are moved, they run randomly, they leave all their things, and they are suffering. But along the way, there's another event also that we are very concerned with, is the abduction of children. There are communities that go abducting children of other communities. And this is also now an event that women are really suffering from it, because you lose your child, you don't know who abducted the child, and it becomes a big problem. It's difficult to trace them in this jungle of South Sudan. So we face this problem a lot. But the work of the parliamentarians in the community also help them to promote the roles of women and girls. Now, women and girls in the community have understood that early marriages should not be accepted, and parents cannot force them into early marriages. It's only because the women went out there to disseminate the rights of the girl child. So at least now early marriages have been reduced because of this dissemination of and then contact and collaboration with women in civil society and women in the parliament. The majority of youth have now also come on board to help in the dissemination, because most of the youth are the ones affected. Like the youth who go and cattle rustle, it is not the older people, it is the youth. The youth that are left and drop out of school, and then in the end you find that the literacy rate is not improving, it's getting worse. So with continuous awareness raising and continuous joint committee between the women caucus and the civil society, the youth have begun to understand that it is important to go to school, it is important to stop this conflict going in, and it is important to have peace so that they can develop. The Specialized Committee on Gender and Child Welfare in the Parliament is another branch that is also working so hard with the civil society to advocate for the government's implementation on women, peace and security. And we also have the Specialized Committee on Security in the Parliament, which also works together with the Women Parliamentary Caucus. In case there is a conflict in an area, they move quickly to go and see what is happening. But these committees in the parliament are always having problem of quick action because of lack of funding. So often they go to an area after a period of time and after so many things have gone wrong. So funding is another very important thing that can help the parliamentarians move. The civil society sometimes pick one or two members of parliament to go with them because they also completed and have the funding. So funding becomes also an important factor in moving the work of women parliamentarians in today's society. On gender-based violence, as I said, there are many instruments that the government have signed to, but now, because of the lack of political will, the women in the parliament are pushing it through the speaker in the parliament that the government have to commit itself into all these instruments that it has signed so that we don't want to see any more gender-based violence. So the government have now given its word of no tolerance to gender-based violence. And I can give you an example of just recently on the 15th of September, this is a few days ago, the mayor of Juba City went on his inspection on his duty, and he had asked people not to vendor on the street. But most of these vendors on the street are women because they need to put food on the table. Women are the ones that are putting food on the table. And they use all available ways to sell items so that they can put food on the table. So this mayor, instead of warning a one-woman street vendor, he just slapped the woman in front of the camera. And of course, all the women jointly came out to campaign against this mayor, and they have asked the government of Central Equatoria to relieve him immediately and also punish him. And we are pleased that the governor of Central Equatoria listened to the women. In the parliament, the women said if this mayor is not relieved, then the governor of Central Equatoria also has to be relieved, because it means he is also part and parcel of the gender-based violence.
Thank you.
This
Thank
is
you
how-
very much. Thank you. Thank you for. Unfortunately, we have to come to a close. We have other more speakers, but thank you so very much, Honorable Betty O'Gole, for sharing the very many different layers of the issue with us, and also ending on such an uplifting note to show that things are changing and that political action and civil action can go hand in hand and make real change. Thank you very, very much for your contribution. Thank you. We now move to our last speaker and move continent for this. And we go to Pakistan, where Hira Amjad, who is a Cora Vice Peacebuilding Fellow, will join us. And, I think the question to you, being not a member of parliament, but being somebody who works as an expert on these issues with parliamentarians and others, really is, what kind of policy changes are you hoping to see, and are you like seeing in reach in the work that you're doing? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone from Pakistan, and good morning where you are. And I hope you're all having a pleasant day, and I'm audible to all of you. Okay,
Yes,
wonderful. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be sharing this panel with so many distinguished women with a lot of experience from different parts of the world. And as I come from Pakistan, and as I evaluate the experience that I've had of working for almost 10 years in Pakistan on sexual and gender-based violence prevention, on sexual and reproductive health rights, I would like to share my 2 cents on the subject. But before that, a little bit preliminary overview of the work that I do here in Pakistan. So basically, I run my own organization, which is called Dastak Women Rights and Awareness Foundation, that has been proactively working on the sexual and gender-based violence prevention agenda in Pakistan. And slowly and gradually over the course of last few years, we have worked in emergencies, conflicts and crises with women directly in order to better understand their needs and challenges that they face, and we try to work with parliamentarians directly in order to mainstream their experiences in the national agenda and policy making through initiatives such as forming alliances, networks, and launching different fellowship programs and peace building initiatives in Pakistan. So over the course of last 10 years, we have encountered various challenges while working directly with parliamentarians and civil society organization leaders in the country and at regional level as well. So one of the core things that I would really like to stress here is, and before moving on to the policy arena, is that there is a strong need to work towards capacity building of parliamentarians on women, peace and security agenda and youth peace and security agenda, not just in Pakistan, but at regional level as well. In Pakistan, we currently do not have a women action plan focused on, national action plan focused on women, peace and security. But very recently, the government launched a national action plan on gender sensitive responding towards climate crises. But even that action plan had a lot of information, had a lot of essential things missing, because women are rarely ever made part of the conversation, and parliamentarians who are sitting in spaces where decisions are being made do not have enough knowledge, technical knowledge and experience vis-a-vis women, peace and security agenda. So there is a very strong need from my or our personal social cultural context is to work on their capacity building so that more legislation which is gender responsive as a result of these collaborations can be made, which is in the interest and needs of young women who are residing within conflict areas. Another very quick example that I would like to share from my context is that this year Pakistan was hit massively by flooding, which led to mass flooding and displacement of women and young girls and children, and that led to a lot of local conflict within the communities as well. But in the action plan, there was no gendered perspective in order to take into account the needs of these women. So I believe that if there is strong correlation and collaboration between civil society and parliamentarians, particularly civil society leaders who are working at grassroots level, like knowledge sharing symposium, knowledge sharing seminars, and collaborative learning workshops and platforms where we can connect and share with each other, like what we have been learning from the grassroots level and how it can be adopted within different policies. So bridging this gap between parliamentarians and civil society leaders, I think, is of utmost importance at this point in time. With an intersectional perspective as well, like whether we talk about the climate crises, whether we talk about immigration issues, whether we talk about the displacement as well. So civil society is working at the grassroots level, and outcomes and policies need to take into account our experiences and things that we are seeing, we are working on at the grassroots level, and that is something that can lead to evidence-driven representation of indigenous communities, indigenous women, rural communities and their needs, and that can be integrated into the women action plans or women peace and security national action plans at national, regional and global level. Another very important thing that I really want to stress here, and another honorable panelist has also stressed on that, is that it's very easy to develop action plan. It's not easy, obviously it requires a lot of hard work, but that is just the first step. What is next? Where does the implementation come in? And that's where also civil society has a very, very important role, because civil society can be the eyes and the ears of the parliamentarians as well as the government, because we are working at the indigenous level. We are working with